What's up guys, it's me Lego Paradise here and welcome back to another episode of Let's Build Lego. So this time we're making another bit of the Lego family house we started in the last episode. And as you can see, I've started adding some doors already and planning out the colours for the different rooms as well. You can see the addition of a back door as well, since it's always good to have a couple of entrances and exits to big Lego house builds like this. So around the back towards the kitchen, you can see I was playing around with a couple of designs for the windows I had thought of, and I was just adjusting them all throughout the build until I finally found something that I was happy with. But I think in the end I moved the windows back a bit and replaced the indentations with some plant pots instead. So like I said last episode, the reason these random bricks are here is to build up a base for a bit of varied height in the terrain. And you can see I'd already reconsidered where the pool was going to be and decided that the small hot tub or swimming pool would look better around the back of the garage. So I left a small gap for that for later on. So here I started building up the walls, and this allowed me to just play around with where I could put the windows, since I didn't want to overdo the windows. At the same time I wanted to make sure that the house was nice and bright and lit naturally with lots of natural light. So I also started work on the garage, and I wanted to make sure I had lots of space for the garage door so I could build that later on, as it would be a very important and detailed part that would be seen from a lot of angles in the house. So I wanted to make sure that I had a lot of space to try out lots of different variations of a garage door. Okay, so I'm just building up some walls here, and the walls don't really have too much variation in this since they're mostly all beige, but it's good to just build up the walls a little bit so you can get an idea of what the final product is going to look like. And before you've completely built the walls up, it's good to just sort of test out your ideas and make sure that everything fits. And if you want to see if you need any more additions to the walls, like lights or plants to make the walls a bit more interesting, then it's easy to add earlier on rather than later. So here I'm just trying out the floor for the garage and the driveway, and this will be separate from the lawn outside, but I'll get to building the lawn in a little bit. Okay, so I'm placing down just a couple of green plates, and this will act as a grass, and I'm going to cover most of the front in grass except for the pathway to the door, since that needs to be nice and smooth, and I'll probably add a mosaic later on. So you can see me just gradually building up the front lawn with all of these green plates and just changing around some of them to make the build a little bit more sturdier and better. Okay, so now you see me starting work on the inside walls, and these are very important since it's tricky to change your walls halfway through the build. So I made sure that I had plenty of bricks available so I can start work on the walls and make sure that I can think about any additions I wanted, again such as shelves or lights I had to put into the walls earlier on in the build rather than later. And that's also something you should consider. Just go through your Lego house in the early stages and just think, does it need something there? Is that wall a bit too plain? And then you can think about whether you want to add a shelf or a cupboard, or even add something to the wall like a light switch or a light. And that just makes all of your plain walls a bit more interesting. So you see around the back towards the corner where the glass doors and the yellow wall meet, that's where I'm going to have the stairs. I hadn't decided this at the time, but it's a very nice cozy spot for the stairs, and also doesn't detract too much from the space and the colour of the overall build. So you can just see me building up all of the walls and just slowly reaching a reasonable height for me to then continue on to the other sides and other walls. So now that I had refilled my brick supply, I continued work onto the walls. And you can see for the toilet, I found this really cool matching yellow door to match with the walls. So I decided to stick with the yellow colour scheme for this section of the house. Okay, so rotating around, you can see I've accidentally used a couple of stickered and printed bricks, but it doesn't matter since soon we'll be covering these up. And you'll see how in a little bit. But for now I'm just building the corridor I mentioned in the same colour, since this was a nice bright colour, especially for tight spaces like the corridor, and also stood out and made these dark areas pretty bright. And that's something you should also consider. Just make sure that all of your areas in your house or building are built out of not too dark bricks, since you want to be able to see all of the details and work that you've put into. Okay, so I'm just finishing up the corridor, and now I can start work on the kitchen. Here you can see I'm just testing where my fridge and cooker could go, and I've made some tutorials of these earlier, so I just made the same ones from my tutorials and used these. And you can see I'm taking the back of the fridge, since the wall will act as a natural back. It also allowed the fridge to be a bit more indented into the wall. And that's something that you want, because you don't want your builds to look too clunky. So here you can see I start adding the first red bricks around the back of the kitchen. And while these red bricks might be a little too dark, they still look very good next to the yellow and soon to be lime green walls of the living room. And you can see I've just added some more cupboards to make the kitchen a little bit bigger. And I've just temporarily took out the door just so you can have a better view. So I might add something later like an oven overhead, but I still haven't decided fully on the interior, and that might take a bit of time to decide on. So I might not film much of the interior, and especially the making of the furniture, since that can be very time consuming, and also it doesn't all happen at once like the building of this house. Like that's the thing I find when building Lego furniture. It's more about when you have to build the furniture, like when you feel like building. You can't really film building the furniture unless you're inspired at that moment to build it. So for that reason it's quite tricky to build some of the smaller details in this house. But still I think it's very interesting seeing all of this house being built up from scratch, especially in this increased speed. And this is 4 times increased speed, if you're wondering. Okay, so now we're moving on to the final room of the ground floor, and you can see we've started adding lime green walls, and again this will be a very light and bright room, which is always nice, especially for areas that don't have a lot of windows, and it can help them be a little bit more brighter. So as you can see, as I'm building up the walls of the downstairs, you can see how the too wide bottom of the wall has really paid off, and it allows me to create walls that are different colours on both sides. This will look even cooler when the house is done. So there's not much more to say as I finish up the ground floor walls, but I think this has been a very productive episode, and hopefully soon we can get on to building a second floor, and we're going to make the ceiling removable just so it's a bit more easier. So that was the second episode of my Lego Let's Build series, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give the video a like, comment and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.